Welcome to the Whitchfield Village College CPD session. Today I'm going to be looking at the use of social media in education. I'm going to be looking at different forms of social media, looking at the uses and so on, and hopefully be inspiring a few new ideas that we can spread around the college. I'll be showing a little bit what I do. Not what I do is necessarily perfect practice, but you know, I've been using it for a while now. So first things first, what is social media? Well, social media are computer-mediated tools that allow people to create, share or exchange information, ideas and pictures or videos in virtual communities and networks. Okay? In other words, social media is an online presence which allows users to share information. The scope and quantity of information shared is limited only by the user. Now, there are these days many different forms of social media. The most popular, most widely used is Facebook, which is this one. This one here rather. Facebook is largely a social interaction social media site. In other words, it's for people to share information between each other, although it is used for other purposes like advertisement and so on. The one I'm going to mainly be focused on today is Twitter, which is this one. Twitter is a social media site which is focused on sharing information as well. But the advantage of Twitter over Facebook is that you haven't got to be friends with people to see or to access the information. It is very much a sort of information repository that you can delve into at your leisure. There are other forms of social media that students also use, things like Instagram, which is this one. That's the world's most popular photograph sharing website. YouTube, a lot of people don't think of YouTube as a social media site, but apparently it is one, which is a huge online film repository. And the final one is one called Pinterest, which is one of the newest and most rapidly growing social media sites. It's essentially like an online pin board where you can put information and pin it and so on, and save it for later reference. I have a Pinterest board, and mine largely consists of things like recipes and information that I want to save for future reference. Now, social media is something that has come under criticism in education in the past, and some people have asked me why should we use social media in education? Well, the answer, in my opinion, is quite simple. We're looking essentially for engagement amongst young people in education, and anything that young people engage in, we should be utilising in educational context. To look at the scope, the number of students, the number of young people using social media as a result of the internet, I had a quick scout around, and according to this Daily Mail article from May 2014, it was claimed that 62% of 7 to 11-year-olds regularly use social media. Now that's quite high, obviously, but that rises to 98% amongst the 14 to 18 age group, and that obviously is our key demographic that we're aiming for. Now, 98% of students, theoretically in this college, therefore, in Key Stage 4, use social media, and we should definitely be utilising it to exploit that proportion, I feel. The reason I chose to use Twitter is, well, part of the reason is that due to this statistic here, which was in a recent social sciences survey at the University of California, 76% of their students surveyed responded to the question, how do you find out what's happening in the world, with the response, Twitter. In other words, Twitter has become the go-to site for most young people, for many young people, to find out information. So we need to make sure the information that's on Twitter is the right information for our students, I feel. So, that's why we should use it. Next question is how. Well, there's lots of ways, and I'm not suggesting for a second that the list I've got up here is an exhaustive list of all the different ways we could use it. But there's just some ideas, and obviously the more you use social media, like Twitter for example, the more ideas you'll gain. So the first thing that I started using it for, the first idea I had, was to set homeworks. One of the complaints we get most frequently from parents and parents evening is the fact they don't know when homework's being set. So we need to make the homework more transparent. The way that I decided to do that in the history department was by setting up a Twitter account and posting homeworks. Now, it's actually very simple to post a homework. In fact, I did it 2 days ago, which is the top tweet here. What I do is take a photograph of the screen. You can see at the bottom there, the homework in your exercise books answer the question, how far has civil rights been achieved in America during the 23rd and 6th, 2015? You then you go onto Twitter on the internet app, the Safari app. Unfortunately, the mobile app doesn't work in school, unfortunately. But you go on Safari's Twitter, and then you simply post the picture and a brief description of what it is, and then obviously that becomes readily available to anybody who wants to access it. So that's where I started from. But once I got into Twitter, once I started to use it more frequently, I became aware of other possible uses for it. For example, sharing examples of unusual or outstanding teaching and learning with students, parents and teachers. It's very, the classroom is very confined, very closed. What we do inside the classroom often doesn't sort of travel outside the classroom at all. And it was actually my daughter's school that gave me the idea of using Twitter for this purpose. My daughter is 4, almost 5, and she goes to a primary school in Peterborough called New Valley Primary School, and her classroom teacher, who's significantly more social media savvy than I am, began to use Twitter to post photographs of the children doing various different activities. And the one that really sort of caught my attention was quite early on in Freya's school career, was this one. And it's a photograph of her saying, when I grow up, I want to be a nurse. She has since gone off there to be a nurse, but at that point, that's what she wanted to do. Now, for me as a parent, that was massively powerful, because I could see exactly what they were doing in the classroom. And it engaged me. I wanted to engage with the school more as a consequence of what I was seeing, these pictures, these regular updates of what was happening in the school. And we can do that here. We can do that at Witchford. We can engage parents in the students' learning here as well by making them aware of what's going on. So I think that is one of the most powerful uses of Twitter, because obviously it makes people aware of what's happening. In addition, you can issue reminders or updates to students, parents and other relevant parties about upcoming or completed events. So, again, photographs or statuses and so on are posted onto Twitter. You can gather new CPD ideas for personal development. Twitter use is enormous. Huge numbers of people using Twitter, including teachers. And there's several people like, for example, a user called Teacher Toolkit, who posts extensively about CPD, ideas for excellent outstanding lessons, and just little tips and so on that you can look at in your own time and leisure. In addition, you can share knowledge passed on from others to broaden students' learning and to lighten individual teachers' workload. Twitter allows you to retweet or repost other people's ideas. So if I just look at our history department Twitter account, you can see that, for example, Mr. Barrett is a teacher at another school, I've never met him. He posted something about the signing of Magna Carta on King John, which I then retweeted. This is sort of a labour-saving idea, but also it makes students aware of the fact that your subject isn't just limited to the classroom, it extends to a much wider audience. This one is something else that I think is a very beneficial outcome of Twitter. Recently I had some students who had worked very hard on a rap battle between Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. And when they were performing the rap battle to the students, I took a photograph of them, posted it onto the Twitter account, having checked, of course, that they had photo use permission. And they were delighted, absolutely over the moon, by the fact that their work was being recognised and being posted onto Twitter. And again, going back to the parents, I've seen some of Freya's work on the New Valley Primary School in Peterborough, and it's tremendously heartening as a parent to see that your child is doing well in school. So that is something else that I think that we should and could be using Twitter for. And the final thing is one that I've never done, but this is an idea that our partner, our Jigsaw partner, recommended, which is ask an expert. Again, it's about making your subject relevant. She talked about a lesson she taught where they managed to get people who worked on oil rigs to tweet answers to questions that her students were tweeting to them, and that element of expertise can be brought into the classroom very easily through Twitter. So, all kinds of different uses. Obviously, I'm sure you're aware there have been issues with the use of social media inside and outside of school as well, and there's certain do's and don'ts you need to be aware of. So, for example, first of all, always check to see if students have photo use permission prior to using any images of them. We're going to be circulating a list of students who haven't got photo permission. It's a much shorter list, the vast majority have. so that it's a much easier thing to relate to, so to check rather prior to doing any tweeting and so on. If retweeting or using external sources of information, always check them prior to publishing them. Obviously, there is a danger with any sort of internet use that people can hack on people's accounts and post things that aren't necessarily relevant or reliable. So just make sure you read things before you retweet them. Post very regularly and remind students where they can find the information you're publishing. I've simply put a thing on the front door of my classroom which advertises the account. Do follow individual groups which have relevance to your subject. Do always link in the Wiltshire Village College account you can then retweet and republish and post. Don't post personal opinions on a school social media account. Don't publish students' names and images together. Don't follow or friend students' accounts on social media. And don't ask anyone under the age of 13 to join the social media sites. Virtually all of them have got a limit of the age of 13. So hopefully that presentation has given you some ideas about the potential uses of social media. And if you've got any questions, feel free to ask them. Thank you very much.